I want to let you know that the United States is going to make a contribution of $10 billion to the Board of Peace. Thank you. And we've had great support for that number. And that number is a very small number when you look at that compared to the cost of war. That's
Something just happened in front of the entire world that nobody in Washington is explaining with the honesty it deserves. $10 billion, announced publicly, sent from the United States Treasury to an organization that legal experts and foreign policy analysts are calling one of the most dangerous power structures ever assembled outside of legitimate international governance. And Trump stood at a podium and called it a small number. A small number. $10 billion of American taxpayer money. Small. Make sure you're subscribed to The John Brown Show, because what I'm about to walk you through is not just a foreign policy story. This is a financial crime story. This is a corruption story, and it connects directly to a pattern of self-dealing that is bleeding this country dry while working Americans are choosing between groceries and utility bills. Here is what just happened. Trump publicly committed $10 billion in American funds to what is being called the Board of Peace. And before you let that name lull you into thinking this is some routine diplomatic contribution, you need to understand exactly who is sitting at that table and what this organization actually represents. Share this video because the membership list of this so-called peace organization tells you everything about its actual purpose. This is not a coalition of democratic allies working toward international stability. The figures associated with this enterprise include some of the most controversial and, in some cases, criminally implicated leaders on the planet. Authoritarian rulers, leaders facing active war crimes allegations in various international forums, strongmen who have systematically dismantled democratic institutions in their own countries. And Trump just handed them $10 billion American dollars while standing at a podium calling it a bargain compared to the cost of war. Think about what is actually being built here. The United Nations exists as the primary body of international governance. Imperfect, frustrating, bureaucratic, but representing the post-World War II consensus that international disputes should be resolved through multilateral diplomacy rather than unilateral force. What Trump is funding appears to be a deliberate attempt to construct an alternative to that system. One populated not by democratically elected representatives, but by autocrats and strongmen who share a common interest in operating outside the accountability structures that legitimate international institutions provide. Make sure you're subscribed, because this gets significantly more alarming when you follow the money trail that surrounds everyone involved. $10 billion announced publicly is only the beginning of the financial picture here. Simultaneously, Trump is pursuing a separate $10 billion claim against the Internal Revenue Service. That legal action, if successful, would also be paid from public funds. $20 billion flowing in and around Trump's political and financial orbit within the same window of time. And these are just the transactions visible from the outside. Consider what has already been documented about how this administration converts political power into personal wealth. Cabinet members purchasing overvalued real estate through government contracts. Family members operating billion-dollar foreign investment vehicles funded by sovereign wealth funds from countries with active business before the American government. Detention facilities being acquired at prices that bear no relationship to their assessed market value, with the financial benefits flowing to entities connected to the officials approving those purchases. This is not occasional corruption. This is a systemic architecture of self-enrichment operating at every level of the administration simultaneously. Share this video because the luxury jet story that just broke makes this pattern impossible to dismiss as coincidence. The Secretary of Homeland Security has been pursuing the purchase of a $70 million Boeing aircraft for official government use. The justification offered publicly was that the plane would be used for deportation flights. That claim collapsed almost immediately. The aircraft in question features a bedroom, multiple shower facilities, a bar, large screen entertainment systems throughout, seating and sleeping capacity that bears no resemblance to the configuration needed for transporting detainees under security protocols. Multiple officials within the Department of Homeland Security have told reporters directly that the deportation justification is not credible, that the plane's design and configuration make it essentially unusable for the stated purpose. What it is perfectly configured for is extended luxury travel for senior officials and their personal companions at taxpayer expense. And the department already operates a perfectly functional government aircraft upgraded relatively recently. The $70 million purchase is not filling a capability gap. It is filling a personal preference. Think about what that $70 million represents in human terms. That is healthcare coverage for thousands of Americans who currently have none. That is educational resources for communities where school funding has been gutted. That is veterans' benefits that this same administration attempted to cut until the public backlash forced a temporary retreat. The money exists. The choice about where it goes is deliberate. Make sure you're subscribed because the broader economic picture surrounding all of this corruption is what makes it truly devastating. While this administration and its allies have accumulated billions through government contracts, cryptocurrency schemes, foreign investment vehicles, and overvalued real estate purchases, the Americans who fund all of it through their taxes are living a completely different reality. Rent is rising in communities across the country. Utility costs are climbing. Healthcare remains out of reach for tens of millions of people. The social safety net that exists in virtually every other developed nation as a basic feature of governance is treated here as an unaffordable luxury. Every other major Western democracy provides its citizens with healthcare, educational support, basic economic security. The wealthiest country in human history tells its citizens those things are impossible while simultaneously writing $10 billion checks to organizations populated by war criminals and spending $70 million on luxury jets for cabinet secretaries. The gap between what is being spent and where it is being spent is not a budget problem. It is a values problem. It is a corruption problem. And the American people are being asked to absorb that gap in their daily lives while the people making those spending decisions live at an altitude of comfort that most Americans cannot imagine. Share this video because the media environment surrounding all of this is part of the problem that needs to be named directly. State-aligned media figures are actively running interference for this financial operation. When the documented wealth accumulation of this administration and its allies gets raised publicly, the response is not denial of the facts. The response is deflection. Accusations that the people raising the questions are themselves corrupt. Claims that the real theft is happening somewhere else by different people through different mechanisms. The goal is not to refute the evidence. The goal is to create enough noise that audiences cannot identify a clear factual picture. That strategy only works when people do not share accurate information widely enough to cut through the noise, which is exactly why you need to share this video right now. Think about the full financial picture assembled across this administration's time in office. The president himself has accumulated wealth at a pace that independent financial analysts have found difficult to attribute entirely to legitimate business activity. Cryptocurrency ventures launched in proximity to official policy announcements. Foreign governments directing business to properties connected to the president. Legal settlements and government contracts flowing to entities with financial ties to administration officials and their families. The Board of Peace $10 billion contribution fits directly into this pattern. It is not a foreign policy decision that happens to involve money. It is a financial transaction that is using foreign policy as its justification. The question that demands an answer is where that $10 billion actually goes once it leaves the American Treasury. Which entities receive it? Which individuals benefit from its distribution? And what relationship those individuals have to the people who made the decision to send it? Make sure you're subscribed because accountability is the only path through this, and it requires public pressure to function. The mechanisms of accountability that should be operating right now are compromised. Congressional oversight has been largely paralyzed by partisan calculation. Justice Department independence has been systematically dismantled. Inspector General offices have been hollowed out. The checks that exist on paper are not functioning as designed in practice. What remains is public pressure. Courts when cases reach them. Elections when they arrive. and the consistent documentation of what is actually happening so that when accountability mechanisms do function, the factual record is clear enough to act on. $10 billion to a shadow international organization populated by autocrats. $20 billion in connected financial claims against the American government. $70 million luxury jets justified with deportation claims that officials within the purchasing department call implausible. Cabinet members directing government contracts toward family business interests. A president whose personal wealth has grown substantially during a term of public service. These are not separate stories. They are chapters of the same story. And that story is about who this government is actually working for. It is not working for the person whose rent just went up. It is not working for the family that cannot afford health care. It is not working for the veteran whose benefits were nearly cut. It is not working for the Olympic athlete training on a second job salary. It is not working for anyone living the daily reality of what American economic life actually looks like in 2025. It is working for the people on the luxury jet, the people at the Board of Peace table, the people whose net worth is climbing while everyone else's purchasing power is shrinking. That is the story. And it is long past time for accountability to catch up with it. This story is just getting started. Stay tuned.